Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat. And today we're going to be having a look at date pickers in VBNet, so we can just pick and click the date on a screen form, and that's going to make life a whole lot easier for dealing with dates. Okay, so there's two types of date pickers we're going to be looking at, the month calendar and the date time picker. And as usual, we should tell you on this video, I talk too slow most of the time, so go to the tools cog, round cog on the video player, and just increase the speed to 1.5x or 1.75x, and then the video will play at a good speed, and that will be much easier for you. All right, so the month calendar pick is the first one, and this is good because you can see the full month calendar on there. And you can just pick and click a date. So the idea here was you pick the date, click go, and it would show that date. So the 12th was the one that was clicked, so it shows it down here as the selected date that the user selected. Now, if you don't have so much space on your form to fit one of those calendars, you can use the date time picker. And with that, users can do a click on the little calendar here next to the date field, and then it will expand up into the month calendar, and they can pick and click a date, which will then go into that field, okay? So if you don't have a lot of room, you need to use the date time picker. Now the date time picker can only pick one date. With that other one, the month calendar one over here, you can actually pick a date range, which we'll show you how to do in this video. So what we are going to show you how to do is use the month calendar first, the one that shows the full calendar on the screen straight away, and we'll show you how you can select a single date with that. And rather than have to click that go button to get the date off the calendar, we'll just trigger it straight away that it can get the date as soon as someone clicks on any date. All right, so we'll set that up. And then we'll show you how you can use the month calendar tool to actually choose a date range rather than one date. So you can choose like a range which will have a start date and an end date in it. Then we'll move across to the date time picker, show you how you select a single date with that. And the date time picker actually gives you the date and the time, the present date and present time, or if you choose a different date, an old date or a future date, it will give you a date, but it also gives you a time, and we'll show you how you can reformat it. So you just pull out the date part and then your program can ignore the time. And finally, we'll look at how these date pickers really minimize the input date validation that's required when you're getting a date from a form where the user is entering it. So that's basically what we're covering in this lesson. So let's get started. So if you've got enough room on your screen, it's much more user-friendly for the people to see the calendar straight away, which makes it really obvious that they need to select a date. So what we do is we have our form, and over in our toolbox, there's a tool called, or an object here, month calendar. So we just drag that one out onto the form, and that gives us this month calendar here. We've just put a group box around it to make it all look nice. We're just leaving it with its default name, by the way, of month calendar 1. Also add a button here, so you need to do this. You've got a button, which is called BTN Go, and we've got a text box, which we're just going to put the selected date in after they click the Go button, and that's going to be called TXT selected date. So use those exact same names because then it'll match up properly with the program code which we're going to use. So double click on that Go button, and the code you need to add is quite simple. In that TXT selected date text, that text box that we've put on the form, we just want to get off that month calendar 1 what date they clicked on. Now how you do that is it has to be .selectionRange.start.date. Now it has a .start date in there because you can also do a range which will have a start date and an end date. We'll look at that later on in the lesson. So that's why that's set up that way. Now we're here in Australia, so you know, the format for here in British format is the day, then the month, then the year. And month has to be actually capital M, because in VB for the date time picker, the time, the minutes part is little m. So yeah, you have to use big M and big M here to get months. Otherwise, it thinks you want to get minutes. So yeah, if we put that code in on the Go button, what should happen is that we can run our program, click on the 12th, right? Click the Go button and it'll put that into our text box, what they selected off the calendar, gets put into our text box here, so that's fine. Now, if they don't pick a date and just click go, it'll just grab today's date. So we're running here on the 3rd of August, so it's just going to pick that and put that into the text box, okay? So if they don't pick anything, it'll just get today's date. So that's nice because you don't have to worry about them selecting nothing. All right, now we can jump to months and years by clicking on different parts of the picker. So how you actually use this date picker is if you needed to go back a month, so we didn't want August and we wanted a date back in July, you just click that left arrow there and it brings up the July calendar, and you can keep clicking the left and go further back in the months. And if you want to go forward, if we're on August, click that right arrow and that's going to take you to the next month, which is September. Things you can also do is if you want to go back a few months or go to any month during that year, just click on the month up here. It'll be faster than using the arrow buttons. Click on that and what you get is you get all the months for that current year. Now, if you need to go back to say a previous year or forward to another year, what you do is just click on this year that's showing up the top down here. So once you've clicked on the month, it'll bring up the current year. We'll click on that current year, and what will happen then is it's going to bring out years that are forward and backwards from that year, and you can navigate through them. And if you click that date range up here one more time, you can dig even deeper and get date ranges. Now, why would you want to go like that? Well, you may need to drill down to get birth dates. So birth dates of old people that were born in the 60s or the 50s and things like that, or even in the 40s or the 30s or the 20s if they're really elderly. Yeah, you can just pick the range here and get to their birth date a lot quicker than doing sideways arrows forever to get there, I guess. So yeah, you can drill right down in that date picker. So yeah, just need to realize that and play around with it on your program and just see how that works. You'll soon get the hang of that. All right, so now we're going to modify our program so that we don't need that go button. As soon as they click any date in that month calendar, what it's going to do is it's just going to trigger and put that date out on our form as a selected date. So we can totally remove that go button that was in here. And rather than use a text box where they could go in and type and modify the date, which we shouldn't have really done on that first version of the program, remove that text box and replace it with a label, and we can make the label look exactly like a text box simply by making the back color white and using a border style as fixed single around the edge and auto size set to false so that we can drag it out to whatever size we want it to appear on the form. So you do that and it looks just like a text box anyway, okay? But the user won't be able to go in there and mess around with it because we only want them to select dates off the calendar. Then we know the date is a valid, correct format. We don't want them going in here and typing their own stuff, which could be wrong. Now, to get all this triggering happening, just go into your VB code. So double click anywhere on that previous form, go into the code, and we used to have some code for the button, which we need to remove. So just remove all that button code that was in there. And in this form one load, what we're going to do is we need to have an event so that when a date is selected on that month calendar, we want it to trigger straight away and we can do some code. So how you set that up is that you go on here where it says form 1 in your coding screen, click this down arrow, and we want to set an event onto the month calendar. So click on the month calendar, and then for the event we want for the month calendar, click on the lightning bolt, and it has this big drop down list which you can navigate with this right hand arrow over here. And the one we want is that the date has been selected, that they've selected a date. That's the event we want. So we're going month calendar and date selected. And then what that does is it writes the code we need. So it's set up here a little subroutine. So we're not actually using the load subroutine. We're using this subroutine, which that picking and clicking to make an event just generated for us. So this is going to say on your month calendar 1, when they've selected a date, do whatever is inside this subroutine. So this is where we add some code, and all we need is the same code as previously, that we want to get the start date from whatever they've picked and clicked on the calendar in British format, day, month, year. So if you're American, you need to swap that round, obviously mm/dd/YYY, and we're going to put that in LBL selected date text on the form. Okay, so let's see how that works out. And when we test this code and the user clicks on a date in the calendar, it's going to be displayed in that label on the screen form. So if they click on the 6th here, straight away, the 6th of the 8th, 2019 gets displayed down here. You don't need to click a go button or anything. Simply clicking any date in the calendar will put it straight into the label on the form, okay? Just by using a date selected event, which we've placed onto the month calendar. So this is why, you know, Visual Basic and object oriented and event driven programming is so good. It really is. It's simple to set up, and it works like a treat and makes sense to the user too when they're using your application. Now, to select today's date, the current date, you can just click down in here where it says today, or you could just click, it's actually marking today up here, the 3rd of August. So you could click there, but the quickest way to get today's date is just click in here and it'll bang, straight away it'll put today's date in there at the bottom of the calendar. All right, now we need to stop, we're going to do some restrictions now on what they can do on the month calendar, all right? So if people are booking something, if this was a booking system and they're going to book in their car for a service, or maybe they're booking a reservation at a restaurant or a hotel, we don't want them to be able to go backwards from today's date, right? They either want to book for today or sometime in the future, but we can't have them do things in the past, all right? So we need to fix up our date time picker so it won't have any dates there before today's date. So they're not available for them to pick. So how you do that is you do this in the form 1 load subroutine. So if you double click anywhere in the blank area of the form around the outside, and that'll bring up form 1 load. So in here, you just have month calendar 1.min date. The minimum date which you're going to allow is the date.today. Date.today in VB will just get whatever today's date is off your operating system, off the Windows 10 on your device, okay? So we're going to set that restriction, and what happens when it runs is today's August the 4th here, and it's not showing, notice here, any selectable dates prior to today's date. So Saturday the 3rd, Friday the 1st of August, the 2nd, and Thursday the 1st of August, these early August dates are not showing because they're in the past, okay? So that means we can only pick today or any date in the future. So that's what happens when you code in this minimum date on the form here. It just will not show any dates prior to today's date, and so they can't pick them. So that's really quick and easy, and that's all fixed up. Now, if we wanted to restrict to a date range, so in this case, let's say students are booking in to make a sort of careers advice, subject selections advice appointment before they pick their subjects for senior school. What we could do is, let's say those appointments run for the next 2 weeks. Then we open up the bookings today and we only want them to enter a date that's within the next 2 weeks, within the next 14 days. So what you do here is, as well as having the min date in the load routine, you just set a max date that's going to be today's date with 14 days added on. So that's what this code here does. All right, so then what happens is that when you run the process, it'll only show from today's date and 14 days later. So you can pick any of these dates because that's today, and they're all within 14 days of today, but it won't show any of these dates. So you just cannot pick and click those dates. All right, so we can restrict what they can see on the form to restrict down the sort of dates that they're allowed to choose from, okay? Make a restricted kind of limited subset of the calendar. So that's a really nice thing, a really nice feature of this month calendar picker as well. All right, now if we want to have start and end dates, so we want the user to be able to pick a start and end date. How it works on the month calendar is they can actually just push down the left button on their mouse and drag across to choose as many days as they want. Well, actually, it's not as many days as they want because VB defaults to 7 days. So there's a property on this date, on this month calendar called max selection count. And when you first drag the calendar out from the toolbox and put it on, max selection count is set to 7 days, but you can go into the properties for this by clicking on it on the form and looking at its properties, and we can change that max selection count value to allow more than a maximum of 7 days to be chosen. All right, so this type of start and end date selection, this is useful for like if they want to enter events in a diary, so say a holiday period, or maybe when a long weekend holiday period is. Students might want to enter the exams period of when all of their exams are occurring. Maybe you're going off on a training course for 3 days and you want to put that into your calendar as a range where you've dragged your mouse across those 3 days to select them. So how we do that is currently our program's only been capturing and displaying just one single date that they click. So what we want to do is change our form now, modify it, and we'll change that 7 days as well. We can change that in the form load subroutine. And we're going to modify the form. So we're going to have now start date and have our label here called LBL start date. So we can just rename the one that was there to LBL start date. We need another label down underneath it, and that's just going to be for the end date. So that's LBL end date. So we need those two labels on there. And then we're going to be able to look at what happens when they drag the mouse to select a date range. Okay, now to set it up to 14 days instead of 7, all we do is in this form load routine here, where we just change that max selection count, we'll just change it to 14 instead of the default 7. So now they don't have to pick a 14-day period, drag across and select all 14 days. They can select 1, 2, 3, 12 days, 11, 18, no, not 18, that's beyond 14. 13 days or even the max 14. So that'll enable them to choose anywhere between 1 for the range and 14 for the range. And down in here, we've just got the date selected event happening, so that as soon as they drag their mouse across and select a date, it's going to put the start date they selected into that label and show it on the form, and put the end date they selected in there and show it straight away on the form. So what we see is this. Here are some results. So if they drag across 6 to 9 and let go of the mouse, it's going to pick up that the start date was the 6th and show that on our label, and that the end date where they finish was the 9th and show that on the label. So you can do less than 14 days. You can drag across and do a full 14-day segment. So here we've picked from the 12th to the 25th, and they're showing down here as the start date and end date, and that's all working fine. And we can also select date ranges that go across months. So if we're in September, it's going to show some of those previous days from August. So you can drag from August 26th here to September 5th, and that'll be crossing over the 2 months. So yeah, that all works well also. And I think that is everything that we would pretty much want to do with the month calendar. So that's the month calendar one finished, all right? And I think now we're onto the date time picker. So yeah, if you want to take a break now and just work with the month calendar, or if you only needed to watch this video because you want to use a month calendar on your project, well, you can probably stop the video and that's it. Or just take a break if you need a break, and then come back, because part 2 here, we're going to look at the date time picker, which is kind of the little compacted calendar. All right, so the date time picker, that's a little compacted one that you click on and you get a pop-up calendar, but you can only select one date. You cannot do ranges with this, so it's a bit less flexible than that month calendar was that we've just seen. So it's in the toolbox as well. It's called Date Time Picker. So you just drag that out onto your form, and what happens is you get a text box with a kind of a calendar next to it where you can click on that calendar to pop it out. So when you click on the calendar, what happens is the current month pops out, and you can pick and click and select dates. Whatever date you pick and click goes down into this date time picker box here. All right, so we're going to be looking at people making an appointment in this example. So we're going to call that date time picker we've dragged out in its properties. We're going to give it a name of DTP appointment. DTP is the abbreviation for date time picker. All right, now the code you need to extract whatever date they've selected works like this. So if we wanted to get the date they've selected into some string variable in our program, str user selected date, let's say, you have to go DTP appointment. That was the name we gave to our date time picker. dot value dot toString and then our British formatting here. Now notice this code here is a lot different to the code we used in the month calendar one, okay, because it had start dates and end dates, ranges possible in that. So just be aware of that. The two types of code you use to extract out what they've actually picked so that you can use that in your processing is quite different between the date time picker and the month calendar picker, okay? Now, another thing about the date time picker is that it'll also give you the time. So it needs to be reformatted there to just pull out the date, all right? If you just grab the date time picker value, what's going to happen is you will get the time as well, and you may not want the time, okay? You just want the date. So yeah, make sure you're doing that reformatting. Now, when we use the date time picker, it'll be for a situation like this. In this, we have all these doctor's appointments here, all the appointments for doctors working in a medical center, and you can search through those appointments with things like doctor and date, patient and date. So if you're doing those types of searches, this is from another lesson we've got on searching data grid views, if you're interested in where it came from. Now you need to enter the date down here, and we're going to have the date time picker as the method of doing that. So we dragged out a date time picker on the form here. So there was no room left to put a calendar date, because down here it shows the results of what you've put in. So when you pick the 23rd of the 5th, 2019, it shows these two appointments here, okay, are coming up because they picked Dr. Brainiac. So Brainiac only had two appointments booked that day, which was at 10:30 and 2:30 in the afternoon. All right, so that's how that works. And that's when you'd use it, when you don't have enough room to put a month calendar on there. Now you can jump to months and years the same way as we did in the month calendar. So this was, say you're in June 2018, a long time ago. Today's the 19th of June, but say you're here and you want to go back one, you know, it's the same thing. That'll take you back to May. Clicking the right hand one will take you forward to July, and then if you click on the June, that's going to show you all of the months for that year, for 2018. So you can pick any of those 2018 months and go backwards and forwards years by using those two. And if you click now on that year, right where it is right there, then you'll get more years to look at that you can pick and click on. And again, if you click right down again on that range, then it'll show you all these ranges, which would be handy for picking really old dates like birth dates and things like that. So yeah, the actual selection of a date for any time, like it could be this month, or maybe it could be in 1928 when your grandmother was born or something like that, okay? Now, for the validation and date pickers, the great thing about the date pickers is that it saves us having to do any program validation coding. So we don't have to worry that they've done something silly or a mistyped month so that they're picking the 31st of February 2019, because February can't have a 31 because it's always 28 or 29 days long. That's the leap year month thing. Yeah, look, it's all fine. They can't put in 31 for February because they have to pick from the calendar, which has all the correct days in it. It knows that August has 31 days, September has 30, and you know, February has 28, but it has 29 in a leap year. So it's kind of foolproof for the user. They just pick and click and it can't be wrong. But there is, however, one exception, and there's always an exception, and there is always a however. And that is that if you want to have prevention of them typing in a future date, so if they're entering birth dates into your application, so they're clicking and picking to get a birth date, we need to stop them picking some date in the future where no one can be born yet. All right, so how we handle that is that we just have the current date, we get that into a variable as date.now, that will get the system date off your computer, and we check get that reformatted to a short date string, all right, so that it's in the right format. And then we compare what they put into their input on the calendar, which we've moved into str user input date already. So they picked and clicked, and we put that result in str user input date. If that's greater than dt current date, then we've got a problem. and we just give them this error message here, which we've formatted up. So yeah, if they try and pick a birth date of 21st of the 10th, 2025, when we're only in 2019, that's not going to work out for a birth date because that's too far in the future. So date of birth error, date cannot be in the future, current date's this one, re-enter the birth date, okay? So yeah, sometimes you will need to do some program validation just to make sure for those situations where you don't want them to pick a future date because a future date is impossible for the scenario you're doing, such as a birth date. But otherwise, it just saves us all that validation. And yeah, it's just so good. And that's what I love about VB. It's got these built-in objects and things that do all the hard work for you. And you can just drag them out and use them on your screen form, and it's just fantastic. Now, some further learning, we have got another lesson on date processing. So if you go to our PASI World of ICT Programming, it was actually lesson number 21. It was called VB. It was called Date Processing in VB. So if you're looking for the YouTube video or the lesson, it's Date Processing in VB, and that'll show you everything you need to know about dates, because we've only shown you the pickers and clickers. This will show you how to actually process them in programs, how you can add on days or subtract days from them, how you can find the difference between two dates that are entered in, what's the duration in days, and all these sorts of things. What are the allowed formats, so you can use dots, slashes, or dashes, or commas. So yeah, all this stuff is in the other lesson. So if you really want to know about dates in visualbasic.net, you've just seen how to use the date pickers, and then you need to go and watch this date processing in VB1 as well, and then you'll be fully equipped with everything you need to know in your head here all about dates, all right? And if you want to get fully equipped with more VBNet knowledge, well then go to our website, thepasiworldofict.com, click on the programming tab to go to the programming page, and you can scroll down through that, and it has all of our lessons, and you can go back and watch other videos, or you can download code solutions if you need them, or other things as well, presentations and all sorts of things on those pages. So yeah, go check that out, the PASI's World of ICT website. All right, so thanks for watching. It's been fun making this video and learning how to use all the date pickers and how fabulous they are in VBNet. If you liked this video and found it helpful, then give it a big thumbs up on YouTube that it was liked, so people know that it's good. And subscribe to our channel so you find out when we do our updates and put our next videos in. Now, as for our next videos, we've kind of finished up what we wanted to do so far to help out our students with their software development, because we've pretty much finished the coding part and building applications section of our course here in Melbourne, Australia. So we now have to do a whole lot of theory before the end of year exams, which come up in November. So we won't be making any kind of more videos about developing apps for a while. We have got plans, and they may not even eventuate till next year, till maybe February next year, but we do want to go through how you can connect up Access with VBNet and do things with that. Okay, so that's a future plan. But what we're going to switch over is we're going to start another playlist. So there'll still be videos coming out, but the playlist we're going to look at is kind of more orientated towards making little games and fun little projects in VBNet for sort of more junior students. So that'll be our next sort of project, is to make some VBNet fun and games projects which people can build and add on to and finish off. So we probably won't do the full game and finish everything off. Maybe we will in the early ones, but later on we'll give you little challenge tasks, so you'll have some knowledge and you'll have to do a bit of thinking up here and figure out how to finish it. So anyway, that's the next thing, fun and games. That's going to be just on the YouTube website, but it's going to be in a different channel playlist, on the same channel, sorry, in a different playlist. And so that's it. And yeah, have fun programming in VB.net.